Before the flood, before Moses, before even the word Genesis was written, there was Enoch, a man who walked with God and vanished into light. They say his name was erased from history, buried beneath the sands of time, whispered only in fragments of scripture. But every few centuries, the earth remembers. A tablet unearthed, a fragment translated, a scroll found in a forgotten cave, each one carrying the same impossible truth, that a mortal once entered heaven and returned with secrets not meant for men. This is the Book of Enoch, a text older than empire, older than kings. Banned by the early church, hidden for 2,000 years, it re-emerged in the mountains of Ethiopia, preserved in silence while the rest of the world forgot its name. Scholars call it Apocrypha. Mystics call it forbiddance. But those who read it know. It speaks of an age when heaven touched earth and fell in love with it. It tells of angels who abandoned their thrones for the beauty of humankind, of knowledge traded for desire, of a world blessed and cursed by the same light. And it tells of Enoch, the man chosen to witness it all, to walk among the stars and write what even angels feared to see. Now, thousands of years later, fragments of his vision have surfaced again, from the Dead Sea to the libraries of Axum, their language older than the Bible itself. And in those fragments lies a warning that what began before the flood may not yet be finished. So tonight, we open that book again. We read the words the ancients sealed, and we listen, not for belief, but for remembrance. Because somewhere between myth and memory, the voice of Enoch still speaks. This book is divided into 5 great sections, each a doorway into a world between myth and memory. The first is called the Book of the Watchers, a vision said to have been written before the flood, describing the moment heaven looked upon the earth and stepped down. For centuries, the name Enoch was known only through a passing line in Genesis. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Nothing more. A single sentence suggesting a mystery. A man who vanished into light, but fragments began to surface. In the highlands of Ethiopia, priests guarded an ancient manuscript written in Gez, the old liturgical tongue. When European scholars first encountered it in the late 1700s, they realized it was something extraordinary, a full book bearing Enoch's name, preserved where no empire had thought to look. Later, in 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were uncovered in the caves of Qumran, and among them lay Aramaic fragments that matched the Ethiopian text word for word. It was confirmation. This was no medieval invention, but a work copied and revered in Jewish circles 2 millennia earlier. The text itself speaks with the cadence of prophecy, but historians read it as a mosaic of voices, some perhaps from the 3rd century BCE, others added over generations. It tells of an age before the flood, when the world was still young, when men lived for centuries, and the boundary between heaven and earth was thin as morning mist. The opening lines read like a preface carved in stone, the words of blessing of Enoch, with which he blessed the elect and the righteous who will be living in the day of tribulation. From that blessing unfolds a vision. Enoch is taken in spirit to see the mountain of the Most High, the dwelling of the angels, the rivers of fire that flow beneath creation. He witnesses the order of the stars, the measure of the months, the places where the winds are born. To ancient readers, it was a map of the invisible. Archaeologists and linguists today trace its language to northern Israel and Judea, written first in Aramaic, translated into Greek, and from Greek into Jez. It traveled not through power, but through faith, carried by small communities who believed Enoch's vision explained the oldest question of all. Why did evil enter a world made good? The answer begins here, in the story of the Watchers. According to the text, there was a time when the sons of heaven looked down and saw the beauty of the daughters of earth. Their leader was named Semyaza. 200 followed him. They descended upon Mount Hermon, swearing an oath together that they would not turn back from what they desired. In that single act, the heavens changed forever. The Book of Enoch describes it not as rebellion, but as fascination, an immortal race drawn to the warmth of human life. Yet the gifts they brought knowledge of metal, of weapons, of enchantment and astronomy became burdens too heavy for the world to bear. The balance of creation shifted. The earth groaned beneath the weight of blood and iron, and the voices of the innocent rose to the gates of heaven. Modern scholars read this as an ancient commentary on the birth of civilization itself, a mythic memory of how knowledge, once divine, entered human hands. To the ancients, the story of the Watchers was not simply about angels and desire. It was about the moment humanity first learned power without wisdom. From here, the manuscript turns darker. Giants are born of the union Nephilim, beings of enormous strength and appetite who consume all that the earth produces. Violence spreads. The oceans rise in grief. And in the silence that follows, the Most High summons the archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel to bear witness to the ruin below. Enoch, still mortal, still walking among his people, is chosen as the messenger between the realms. He will be shown what no man has seen, the judgment of the Watchers, and the cleansing of the world. In the ancient manuscripts. This moment is the turning point, the crossing of a line that separated heaven from earth. The story is recorded in the section scholars called the Book of the Watchers, the oldest part of the Enochic collection, likely written sometime between 300 and 200 BCE. According to the text, the Watchers were a host of heavenly beings tasked with observing the earth and guiding its order from afar. They were not fallen yet, not evil, not holy, simply watchers, guardians of balance. But the manuscript says that when they looked upon humanity, they saw a reflection of their own longing, the warmth of mortality, the beauty of impermanence. The leader among them was Semyaza, whose name means the one who sees. Gathering 200 of his kind, he spoke the words that would bind them to their choice. Let us descend and take wives from among the daughters of men. Let us make a new life upon the earth. The passage calls this pact the Oath of Hermon, named for the mountain where they swore it. Mount Hermon, a real peak on the modern border between Lebanon and Syria. Archaeologists note that the site has long been associated with temples and inscriptions of the early Semitic gods, though there is no direct evidence of the oath itself. Still, the geography in the text is remarkably specific, which suggests the author knew the land well. From that height, the Watchers are said to have descended, not in fire, but in light, a quiet falling of stars. Ancient readers may have imagined a meteor shower. Modern historians see it as mythic imagery for divine visitation. Whatever the intent, the meaning is clear. Knowledge from above touched the world below. The Watchers took human partners, and through them they introduced arts unknown to early humanity. The text lists them carefully. Azazel taught the working of metal, swords, shields, and jewelry of precious stones. Semyaza taught enchantments and the cutting of roots. Oracle revealed the secrets of the stars and their courses. Kokabel, the signs of the constellations. Penemu showed men the art of writing, and Kasdea, the use of herbs for both healing and harm to a modern reader. This passage reads like an ancient explanation for the rise of civilization, the moment humanity first learned metallurgy, medicine, and astrology. In the mythic language of Enoch, these discoveries were double-edged. Knowledge that lifted humankind, it also brought ruin. The story captures the tension every age has felt, that progress comes with a cost. From these unions were born the Nephilim, beings of enormous size and appetite. They consumed the labor of mankind until the earth could bear no more. The text says, "They devoured all which the sons of men produced." And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. To historians, this is not literal. It is a poetic way of describing social collapse, the chaos that follows when knowledge outpaces wisdom. To the ancients, it was the sound of creation crying out for balance. The earth itself becomes a character in the story. It cries to heaven, its voice carried by the winds. My face is destroyed by the violence of men. In this image, environmental ruin and moral decay are the same thing. The first ecological parable written in sacred tone. And so, in the text, the archangels appear. Michael, the protector. Gabriel, the messenger. Raphael, the healer. And Uriel, the light of God. They look down upon the earth and see the shadow of the Watcher's gift spreading across creation. Each is given a task, to bind the fallen, to cleanse the world, to preserve what is good. The Book of Enoch describes their descent not as wrath, but as restoration, heaven correcting itself. Modern scholars compare this imagery to the flood narrative in Genesis, seeing both as retellings of an older Mesopotamian theme, divine order responding to chaos. But where the Sumerian and Babylonian stories speak of angry gods, Enoch speaks of sorrowful ones. Heaven mourns for its own error. Meanwhile, Enoch, still mortal, still walking among his people, begins to dream. He sees visions of mountains trembling, of rivers changing their courses, of stars that fall and do not rise again. These images mirror what ancient observers might have seen in earthquakes or meteor storms, recorded later as symbols of judgment. As the world darkens, the manuscript pauses. The next lines will describe Enoch's call, his journey from earth to the places of heaven where judgment will be written. But here, in the heart of the story, the tone shifts from myth to message. The Book of the Watchers becomes a warning written for all generations, that knowledge, once given, cannot be undone, that every gift carries its shadow, and that even angels are not immune to longing. In the surviving JEZ manuscripts, the narrative slows here. The writer turns from the deeds of the Watchers to the world they left behind, a planet out of balance. The text says, "And the earth brought accusation against the lawless ones." It is the oldest known passage where the planet itself becomes witness and victim, long before human law or science could describe such a thing. Across the ancient Near East, similar laments appear in clay tablets, Sumerian hymns where rivers complain of pollution, or Akkadian myths where the soil refuses to yield. Modern historians see in these lines a shared fear that civilization, once awakened, might consume the order it depended on. The Book of Enoch gives that anxiety a voice. The giants, born of the Watchers and humankind, are described as restless, unable to be satisfied. They devour harvests, livestock, and at last one another. Their violence fills the earth with the cry of the slain. Whether literal or symbolic, this passage carries the rhythm of collapsed fields trampled, cities falling silent, survivors calling to the heavens that had once seemed so near. In the story, those cries reach the throne of the Most High, the archangels. Standing before the presence of light, are sent to observe what has become of creation. Michael speaks first, pleading for mercy. Gabriel asks that the chaos be restrained. Raphael, whose name means God heals, offers to purify the wounds of the earth. And Uriel, the watcher of stars, brings a message. A mortal among men is ready to hear. That mortal is Enoch, seventh in descent from Adam, ancestor of Noah, living in an age when the years of a man were counted in centuries. Genesis mentions him only briefly, but here the text expands. It portrays him as a sage, a quiet man who walked in righteousness, who recorded the signs of the seasons and spoke gently to his kin. No miracles, no thrones, just a life attuned to order. The ancient author might have meant Enoch as a symbol of humankind at its best, observant, curious, uncorrupted by the gifts that ruined others. To him, the archangels appear in vision. The JEZ manuscript says, "And they called me Enoch, the scribe of righteousness." From that moment, his role is not hero, but witness. Modern scholarship sees this elevation as unique in early literature. Before Enoch, no human figure was taken bodily into the divine realm without dying. Later traditions, Elijah's fiery ascent, or the mystical journeys of Ezekiel echo the same pattern. The Enoch text may be the prototype. The account describes how the veil between worlds opens in dreams of the night. The imagery is measured and solemn. A wind that lifts him, a mountain whose summit touches the sky, clouds that shine like molten metal. It is not a flight, but a passage each level brighter and more silent than the last. What he sees are houses of crystal and tongues of fire, metaphors that scholars link to temple architecture and astronomical observation. To listeners in antiquity, it was both a religious vision and a map of the heavens. Within that vision, Enoch is shown the record of the watcher's deeds. Tables of writing appear, before him rows of symbols etched in light. These are the heavenly tablets, an image that recurs throughout Near Eastern literature. The idea that every act is inscribed somewhere beyond reach. For early readers, it offered moral symmetry. For historians today, it marks the birth of written ethics, the notion that words preserve justice. The voice that speaks to Enoch does not thunder. It tells him to write what he sees and deliver a message to the watchers who descended. Their petition for forgiveness has been denied. They will watch their children perish. They will see the world renewed without them. Yet even here, the text carries compassion. The messenger weeps for those he condemns. Archaeologists who study the Dead Sea Scrolls note how this section parallels fragments found at Qumran, written centuries before the Common Era. It suggests that the legend of Enoch was already widespread among the communities that produced it. Scrolls, people seeking meaning in times of oppression and change. To them, the fall of the Watchers was not only about angels. It was about rulers who abused power, about the danger of forgetting the harmony of creation. As the segment closes, the manuscript describes a silence over the world. The giants fall. The Watchers are bound. Enoch stands between heaven and earth, holding a record no one else can read. The stage is set for judgment, the flood that will cleanse, the renewal that will follow. For the listener today, this is less a prophecy than a mirror. It reminds us that every age writes its own version of the same lament, that wisdom arrives faster than understanding, that power tempts even the guardians, and that the earth, patient but fragile, keeps the memory of our choices dot in the surviving manuscripts. The rhythm of the narrative slows again, as if the writer himself paused before describing what comes next. The rebellion of the Watchers is finished. The Nephilim lie fallen, but the echo of their knowledge remains, humming through the ruins of a world that once shone with light. The text tells that the 4 archangels descend to execute the decree of the Most High. Michael binds the leaders of the Watchers in deep valleys of rock, in darkness until the great day of judgment. Raphael heals the wounds of the earth, the poisoned waters, the barren soil. Gabriel drives the giants into battle against one another until none are left to consume the living. And Uriel opens the channels of the deep, preparing the waters that will wash the world clean, to ancient audiences. These verses were not scenes of destruction, but of restoration, a ritual cleansing of imbalance. The flood that follows, described more briefly here than in Genesis, marks the return of rhythm between heaven and earth. Modern scholars read it as the final motif in a cycle of myths shared from Mesopotamia to Canaan. Divine order, broken and remade. Through it all, Enoch remains the witness. He records what he sees on the heavenly tablets, then is shown the place where the souls of the righteous and the wicked await judgment. This portion fascinated later theologians because it sketches an early concept of afterlife, long before formal doctrine existed. It speaks of chambers of light and shadow prototypes of heaven and hell, but presented not as reward and punishment, rather as states of harmony and dissonance within creation. Archaeological fragments from Qumran confirm that these passages were copied repeatedly by the same scribes who preserved the Book of Isaiah. For them, Enoch was not heresy. He was continuity, the missing link between early patriarchs and the prophetic tradition that would follow. The narrative ends quietly. Enoch delivers his message to the Watchers, who beg him to intercede once more. He weeps, but the answer he receives is final. You shall have no peace, nor forgiveness of sin. Yet the tone is not vengeance. The tragedy lies in inevitability, the sorrow of beings who once knew perfection and cannot return. It is the world's first elegy for lost knowledge. After this, the text shifts into visions of renewal. The mountains are restored, the waters clear, the seasons return to their appointed courses. Humanity, diminished but enduring, begins again. The manuscript closes with a single line of blessing. Then shall all the righteous be humble, and they shall live till they beget 1,000 children. To later editors, that sentence signified a rebirth of harmony. To modern readers, it reads like the dawn after a storm. When European scholars translated the Ethiopian manuscripts in the 18th and 19th centuries, many were astonished by how much of later theology already lived in these pages. Angels with names and hierarchies, a cosmic rebellion, even a figure of ultimate judgment who resembles the later Son of Man. Fragments of those ideas would filter into Christianity, Islam, and medieval angelology, though the book itself was excluded from most canons. The Ethiopian Church alone kept it intact, reading it as sacred history, while others called it Apocrypha. Today, historians treat the Book of the Watchers as both myth and milestone, a document that preserves one of humanity's earliest reflections on ethics, responsibility, and the limits of power. Its geography is real. Mount Hermon still stands. Its themes are universal: the seduction of knowledge, the fragility of balance, the hope that even after ruin, order can return. If you walk among the ruins of Qumran or the monasteries of Lake Tana, you may still see fragments of parchment bearing Enoch's name. The ink has faded, but the cadence endures a steady pulse beneath millennia of silence. For every civilization that rises, the story returns, whispering the same refrain: that the heavens once looked down, that the watchers once walked among us, and that their choices, like ours, shaped the fate of the world. And so ends the first chapter of this ancient chronicle, the Book of the Watchers. In the next, the journey will turn upward, as Enoch himself is taken beyond the sky to see the structure of the cosmos, the paths of the sun and stars, and the mysteries of time. Until then, let the mind rest on the image of balance restored, waters settling after the flood, clouds thinning over mountains reborn, a planet breathing once more beneath a silent, watchful heaven.